Hi, welcome to this new, or not so new, crazy virtual world. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I'm Robin Gualtieri, the FTN State Chair. Today we're going to discuss employment first, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a different perspective on helping students with disabilities find careers. Of course, we all want the students we work with to become employed, but we might need to shift our perceptions of what employment will look like. In my experience, we especially struggle with two groups of students with severe disabilities and those students we call tweeners, students that don't qualify for regional centers, yet have disabilities that may significantly impact them in the workplace. Before we get started, here are the links to the Employment First documents for your convenience. They are housed on Workability Central under the FTN documents. I'm sure we've all been in meetings, live and virtual, where we feel like this. And I'm sure we'd all be partying like these folks if we were doing this in person. I'll try to meet somewhere in the middle. Forewarned, I'm very passionate about this topic, and you'll see why very soon. Unfortunately, I can't see people wiggling in their seats to let me know I'm preaching, but I'll try to keep myself in check. I was taught to always put connections before content. When I think of connections, I think of getting to know you as well as you getting to know me. Since we are in a virtual platform, I'll tell you a bit about myself, and you can telepathically let me know who's out there listening. I am currently the transition specialist for San Jacinto Unified School District and the orthopedic impairment specialist. I am also the coordinator / one-woman show for our Workability One program, We Can Work, and PIP. I've been in education for about 20 years. I was originally a biomedical engineer, and then I had the joy of my life, my daughter. She was born with spina bifida. My husband and I had no idea what an incredible journey was waiting for us. Kimberly has had over 60 surgeries. About 40 of them involved her shunt that drains excess cerebrospinal fluid from her brain. She has 3 seizure disorders and is effectively paralyzed from the waist down. In addition, she is on the autism spectrum. She was only about 4.5 pounds when she was born. In the first picture, she was 2 or 3 months old. My husband could just about hold her in one hand when she was born. When she was young, she walked with a walker and braces. As she got taller, she began using her wheelchair. The final picture is when she graduated from the local community college with an AA in behavioral social science. I switched to education from engineering when my daughter was in the 4th grade. I decided I wanted to help students with disabilities receive the best education possible. I stumbled into teaching a TPP class and never looked back. After all, the goal of school for any student is to get them moving into a productive adulthood, and I was able to help students with disabilities find their paths. What I came to realize was that traversing through school was only the start. Kimberly helped me find my path and my why to do what I do. Employment First came about as a result of the Workforce Investment Act, which provides for job training and related services to unemployed and underemployed individuals. It became apparent that individuals with disabilities needed even more supports with respect to employment. Governor Brown signed Employment First into law on October 2013, and shortly thereafter, the federal government enacted the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act as landmark legislation designed to strengthen and improve our nation's public workforce system and help get Americans, including youth and those with significant barriers to employment, into high-quality jobs and careers, and help employers hire and retrain skilled workers. So what is the difference between WIOA and Employment First? WIOA applies to Americans, including youth, and those with significant barriers to employment, to help them get high-quality jobs and careers. Employment First specifically identifies services that are intended for individuals with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. Just a note, that doesn't mean that we can't use these strategies for all of our students with disabilities. Just to make sure we are all speaking the same language, I'd like to go over two of the key concepts of Employment First: integrated employment and competitive employment. Integrated employment refers to a setting where employees with disabilities will be working with peers that don't have disabilities. Competitive employment refers to compensation. Individuals with disabilities will be paid the same wage that their peers without disabilities are paid for the same job. So why is Employment First needed? Well, in the late 60s and 70s, we saw changes to the environment to accommodate individuals with disabilities. This was heavily influenced by returning Vietnam veterans. We started seeing handicapped accessible bathrooms and ramped accesses to buildings. There were laws passed to ensure access to public spaces, but that didn't mean architects, structural engineers, and general contractors were thrilled to change the way they had always designed and built structures. I knew a structural engineer that designed car dealerships. One day he commented that it was ridiculous to put handicapped bathrooms and access ramps in car dealerships. He said, "Crippled people don't drive." Well, boy, has that ever changed. I don't think those involved in building the physical environment really knew how to accommodate possible challenges rather than just not wanting to help. Students with disabilities were beginning to become integrated with the general student population in the late 80s and early 90s. Some of you might remember small schools for students with disabilities built next to the so-called normal schools. It was either on the same property but in a different area or next to it. Students with disabilities were eventually moved to the main schools, but teachers and administrators had little to no experience working with the challenges that would accompany the move. I actually heard a principal comment that if any more of those kids came to her school, it wouldn't be pretty anymore. While we don't have all the answers, we certainly don't resent students with disabilities in our schools and are continually striving to increase the level of education we are providing each and every student. Individuals with disabilities are no longer hidden. They participate in most aspects of life, but workplace opportunities are still lagging. It's not necessarily that employers don't want to employ individuals with disabilities, but just like in the physical environment and the educational realm, employers haven't learned how to accommodate challenges that might pop up. That is where Employment First comes in. If we help our students learn how to self-advocate, provide students and families with the mindset that they can become employed, and help employers learn how to work with employees with disabilities, we can see huge changes. Back to the hard, basic, cold facts. In 2014, 74.7% of the working age population in California worked full-time. If you compare that to the information from EDD, only 13.1% of the regional center clients were working, and most of them were working part-time, and many were earning less than minimum wage. Parents didn't see any reason for their children to work and risk losing benefits such as SSI. We still face that fear and need to educate parents, families, guardians about the facts. That's a discussion for another day, but you might want to contact the local work incentive planner at the Department of Rehabilitation for more information, or go to the Social Security website and review SSI benefits. Again, we are all motivated to help our students become employed, but those of us connected to Workability One are required to provide employment-first information regarding employment opportunities and CIE supports as part of our statement of assurances, and that is item 18. So let's take a look at the obstacles to employment for individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities. To begin with, it could be the actual disability. We can't change that. We do need to spend a bit of time learning about the disability and becoming familiar with the accommodations that could best help the student. Using the Job Accommodations Network website, JAN, might be a great resource. Work with the family to learn what adaptive equipment the student may be using at home and how they accomplish tasks at home. The school site and the home are very different environments. How does the student manage in the community? Again, look to the student and family for information. As mentioned before, we need to take the employer's concerns and misconceptions into account. Families and guardians have concerns and misconceptions too. We'll take a look at both of these and try to come up with some ways to help overcome the challenges. Please don't jump to the conclusion. Let's talk about employers. So please don't jump to the conclusion that employers don't want to help or employ disabled individuals. Remember back to the days when students with disabilities were integrated into mainstream schools and teachers just weren't prepared? That is probably the same with employers. Show them some grace. Help them become comfortable with the idea. Share success stories. You don't have to have your own. Look to your LPA group and neighboring Workability One projects. We're great at sharing, so reach out. Use the Bell newsletter. They're full of success stories. Workability One has amazing videos that were produced in 2016. I put a link to the employer video in the presentation for your convenience, but I won't show it right now. If you haven't seen it or haven't seen it for a while, please take the time to watch it. Currently, customized employment is becoming more widespread as a way of helping individuals with disabilities become employed in more than just stocking or janitorial type jobs. I'm going to spend just a few minutes discussing customized employment, but I promise I'm only scratching the surface. Look to your LPA partners, DOR and regional centers to get more information and possible training. It is definitely a game changer for our students. The basic premise of customized employment is molding the job to the student/employee rather than molding the employee to the job. This is definitely easier said than done, but it works. You just need to think outside the box. Listen to the student and the family. Listen to the employer and come up with a plan. I won't mislead you. It is time-consuming, but the rewards are amazing. And as Workability One, we are used to hard work to achieve amazing outcomes. Now let's look at families and guardians. Okay. Show them some grace. They aren't difficult generally just to be difficult. They're worried, frustrated, and often uninformed. Please, please, please honor their concerns. We need to listen to what they say. They've spent years in mama bear mode, and now we're asking them to let go. Of course, the conversations need to start as early as possible, not when the student is approaching their 16th birthday. When you think about the journey families have taken to this point, you need to think about their perception of what has happened. This may not be the reality, but it is their perception. They've spent years in IEPs hearing about what their children can't do. They've often spent years in doctors' offices hearing about what their children can't do. They've been with well-meaning friends and family and seen what their children can't do when compared to other children. Now we're telling them their children can work. Ever tried to make a U-turn in a fast-moving car? The outcome would be a tragic failure. You need to prepare in advance to be successful. This is no different. We need to help prepare families and students. We need to build trust and hope for families as well as students. Excuse me. They're mowing outside and kicking up dirt. One of the best ways to build that trust and hope is to involve families. Person-centered planning looks at the child and the child's circle of support. I know. We do it to a point, but often we are just too busy to follow the steps with fidelity. But in the long run, it takes less time if we spend a little more time up front with the student to get them employed. We need to look at how we can collaborate with our colleagues to make this happen. And it will help us in the long run as we try to place the student in the job. When I spoke with families regarding some of the questions and concerns they had when we started the employment first conversation, SSI was probably the biggest concern. As I mentioned earlier, there have been some great safety nets established for individuals with disabilities when looking at SSI/SSDI and work. It might be great to create a simple handout that includes some of the major points regarding employment and benefits. Look to your local DOR office to help you. Parents are also worried about their children's safety, especially now. You might want to enter into a discussion regarding how initial job sites are selected. Let them know the sites have been vetted and discuss the training both coaches and students have gone through to address safety on the job and in the community. Transition is another burning issue, especially when you mention the nasty B word, bus. You might want to invite parents to observe a mobility training session. Just as we say, knowledge is power for students, knowledge is power for families too. Families are often concerned with community partner/employer expectations. You need to explain that all involved understand that the program is for students with disabilities, but their child's personal information will not be disclosed by staff. Disclosure would be at the discretion of the student and the family. Of course, pertinent emergency information consistent with any employee would be provided. Families should have been updated periodically as to the types of trainings a student has undergone, but it wouldn't hurt to refresh their memories on this issue. And of course, it is vital to review the type of opportunity that is being provided. Is it an internship to develop basic work skills? Is it a temporary subsidized position that might become a permanent direct hire opportunity? Is this something that will help them become employed after they graduate from the K-22 system? Make sure to be transparent to the family. It really helps to understand and build trust. Finally, families wonder if the child is ready to work. Remember, employment first is looking at people with disabilities working as their first opportunity. As parents, you know your struggle to see your children as the rest of the world does. I'm still taken aback when someone refers to my daughter as Ms. Gualtieri. It makes her sound so much older than I see her. This is a time to share the multiple measures and career research that has been done in school, as well as all of the other life skills addressed. Remember, families aren't being difficult, but protective. We just have to help them understand we are in that protective circle too. I had planned to provide some interactive activities at this time when we were meeting in person. I'll just run through some ideas. I strongly suggest role-playing discussions with parents. That might be a great activity to do with your LPA group or nearby Workability One projects when you all get together. In addition, you might also role-play discussions with employers. As for the students, it is important to review the vocabulary in the Employment First trifold. This is vocabulary that they will probably hear throughout their work journey. Using a tool such as Kahoot or Gimkit might be a fun way to learn and understand the vocabulary. It is also important for them to understand how the different activities they are doing align with their journey to enter the work world. I have each student create a poster that lists each of the 5 areas in the workability or the Employment First trifold. Then I let the students post what they've done to fulfill each of the areas. It's fun, interactive, and informative, and it's something that they keep creating throughout the year. This student, under school activities, she included that she was taking a cooking class. She helped her teacher write her IEP, and she went to school every day this month. As far as family activities, she invited her mother to her IEP. Her mom came to her job fair. She helped her mother cook dinner, and she is taking care of her dog. For career planning, she did her California Career Zone test. She learned how to fill out a job application. She visited the Amazon distribution warehouse on one of our field trips. She practiced an interview, and she saw the jobs at the mall when they took their field trip. With connecting with the community, she helped plan her bus trip to the mall. She participated in Special Olympics, and she met with her regional center counselor, and she actually set up the meeting. In leadership, she told her cooking class teacher about the way she learns. So she was using her self-advocacy skills to talk about her accommodations. She joined the anime club at school, and she's part of the ASB team at school. While Kimberly has her degree, she still finds it difficult to find a job. She's had several part-time jobs, but struggles managing work, doctor's appointments, and health concerns. You can't see it in the photos, but she's in a bright green wheelchair. She gets interviews and has been told she presents herself very well in an interview. But job offers are far and few between. Kimberly is one of those tweeners. She doesn't qualify for regional center, but her disabilities provide a significant barrier to employment. That is where Employment First practices come in. And I said earlier, she is my why. Think about a family member, friend, or student that could benefit from Employment First. Think about how that individual's life could change if Employment First was the norm rather than a new concept. It is much easier to implement a policy when you have a firm handle on your why. Employment First isn't geared towards individuals like Kimberly, but if we adopt it as the norm, we can be the change makers for employment outcomes for all students with disabilities. Thanks so much for listening.